Well, hi guys. Hello, Alexey.
Hello. Hi, Ekaterina. Hello, everyone. Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Today we've decided to speak English only. Fortunately, thanks, Alexey, to accept my invitation. Normally, we've been speaking a lot for Russian listeners, but today we decided to change a little bit. I've been living in France for 10 years. What about you, Alexey?
First of all, I would like to say thank you very much, Ekaterina, for this opportunity to speak. And I'm really excited because normally, as an interpreter, I only translate the ideas and thoughts of other
Others.
people and put them in a different language. But here, finally, I get to speak by myself. And this is wow, this is cool.
Yes, for interpreters who must be very, very intelligent, clever, and not only, but really intelligent. It's really a challenge to speak on our own sometimes.
Yes, we are not used to that very much. As
Yes.
for where I live in Russia, and I lived in Russia for all my life, but I only worked for a while abroad. I had some business trips, but mostly, yes, I lived in Russia. I learned English and French in Russia at Moscow State Linguistic University, the Moscow State Linguistic University.
Named after
And
Lomonosov, you mean, right? This one.
no,
Named
it's
after
not
Maurice
Lomonosov. It
Therese.
used to be named after Maurice Thorez,
Okay, this
yes. And
one.
now, for some reason, it's just the Linguistic University. But actually, my interest in English started at 9 years old when I went to America for the first time. And it was for a surgical operation.
Mm.
I had some heart problems.
Mhm.
And in the Soviet Union, they didn't treat it so well. They didn't perform the surgery so well for that kind of heart operations. And I was able to go to the United States with my mother. I was
Mhm.
just 9 years old. And it was really very exciting because it looked like I traveled forward in time, maybe by 50 years, because in the Soviet Union, the hospitals were so old and decrepit, and the staff was very rude sometimes. But in America, I was really in love with this country, with the American hospital. Everyone smiled to you. Everyone was so positive. So this was a cultural shock from me.
Mhm.
Yes, and that's when I fell in love with the United States, and I got interested in English because I learned that a whole nation was naturally speaking English. And I really did my best to to learn English at school after that.
To succeed, yeah, to succeed with your
Yes.
university graduations and so on. It's not the only language you've been working with, right? As far as I understood, you've been working with French like me either.
Yes, yes. And then at the university, I also learned French, but I didn't start working with it as an interpreter at the beginning because, well, at first, actually, I did not work as an interpreter, but I was a customs and logistics manager.
Mhm.
So I worked with the customs, prepared the documents for the customs for imports and exports, and some tax declaration, something like that.
Kind of
But
technical, most
finally,
of technical English, not
yes,
well.
yes,
Mhm.
technical English and also lots of paperwork. But then I really got tired of this job because, well, it was really difficult. The customs officers were often very rude. They could stop the commodities for no reason, stop some trucks and say, "Well, we will not let it go," because there was
Those American
some
ones,
small
you mean
hitch.
from?
No, I worked in Russia. It was the Russian tax office. Yeah,
Okay.
the Russian customs office. Sorry, the Russian customs service.
Mm.
Yes, they gave us a lot of problems. And then I decided to become an interpreter. First, I worked only with English. I finished some simultaneous interpretation courses,
Mhm.
5 weeks, and I also had a solid English base after the university. So I started off quite soon. And then I had another 1 year program at the same linguistic university for simultaneous interpreting. So I have two diplomas. I'm an economist and a simultaneous interpreter.
Okay, great. And do you prefer mostly to work with consecutive or simultaneous interpreting? Well, what would,
Oh, I prefer simultaneous. Maybe we should explain to our listeners that
yeah,
there are two kinds of
the difference?
interpreting.
Mhm.
Yeah, simultaneous interpreting is when you are in the booth normally and you listen to the speaker and you speak at the same time. So you finish translating the first sentence and you already listen to the next sentence at the
The
same time.
hardest one, I'd say, the hardest
Yes,
one. I've never
yes.
tried, and I think it's really, really, well, respect to everyone who is able to do that from my side.
Thank you. But with some practice, you really start to do that. And I would say that it's easy to interpret from Russian into English because English really has a fairly simple grammar. Yeah, you have the noun at first, then the verb, then
Or
everything else. And this is rather simple, but it's difficult for me to translate from English into
vice
Russian
versa,
because
vice versa.
English
Mhm.
is difficult for understanding. There are so many accents. There are so many people from different countries, from Asian countries, from different European and Latin American countries
India, yeah,
speaking
India,
English.
South Africa,
India,
yeah,
yes,
New
India
Zealand.
is very difficult. Yes,
Australian
some
accent can be quite particular one.
that's true. Indonesia, Vietnam, that's are the countries that I'm
Mhm.
struggling with. Yes. And even the native speakers can be from different parts of the United States. Yeah, from the South. They can be from
Texas, for
Scotland, from
example, I used
Ireland.
to live there. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
So, and Russian is difficult to interpret into because the Russian language has a difficult grammar with six cases, and you really need to think how to put this adjective, that adjective, what the ending should be, while at the same time you should listen to English. So it's more difficult, but with experience, you get used to that and you get better.
Okay, I see. Yeah,
Right,
thanks a lot to
right.
for explaining that to our
Yes.
listeners.
Well,
Exactly. What about
yes.
consecutive?
And yes,
Consecutive.
and there is consecutive interpreting. That is when you allow the speaker, well, the speaker says several phrases. Maybe he can talk for a minute, for several minutes, and then the speaker should make a pause, and then you interpret all he has said in a different language. So that works with pauses. And it takes almost twice as long because first everything should be said in one language, then in another language. Um,
I've
and
been practicing this one mostly here in France.
yes,
I've been practicing this
yes,
one. Yeah.
that's right. You don't need special equipment. But actually, it's really difficult because you need to have a good memory, or you should have a good technique of taking notes so that you can really remember everything that the speaker said and then interpret it.
Mhm.
And actually, I prefer the simultaneous interpretation because with simultaneous interpreting, you sit in a booth, people don't look at you. And with consecutive, for example, there are a lot of people who speak English and Russian. Sometimes they are specialists in this area and they
Or
will
not.
listen
Yeah,
to you.
it
If you
can.
make a mistake, yeah, they will listen to that. They might, this might attract attention. So actually, this is a very responsible job. Yes.
What about the work on the vocabulary in this case? Well, we are supposed to ask the list of the vocabulary on if we are supposed to work on a subject, we are professional and we are
Yes.
not. And how do you work with a list of unknown words? Because it happens every time, I think, for all
Yes,
of us.
we need to get ready. I always get ready for the next assignment. And to begin with, I ask the organizers to send me some materials. Usually, the speakers have some slides to share. Very rarely, they even have some text, but this is very rare. This is an exception. But sometimes they can send you some slides. and
You mean
in
kind of
advance, yeah,
PowerPoint,
what one day
PowerPoint,
before. Yes,
how do we
PowerPoint
call it?
slides, PDF maybe.
Presentations,
Yes.
yeah,
And
presentation.
I look at those presentations. I try to understand the subject, what it is about, and also I make a glossary of some words which are special terms in this particular area. But very often in Russia, they don't give you any materials at all, and you don't even know who the speakers are.
Doesn't seem to be
You don't
quite
get
professional, I would say, yes.
Yes, you don't get even the list of the speakers, nothing, but almost always you actually have the topic, right? You know that this is going to be, well, about, I don't know, tax deductions, yeah, or about some kinds of fish. Well, and then you normally I go on Wikipedia and I read the Russian text about it, even if it's quantum physics. Yeah, for example, I've done some interpreting on that. And so I looked at Wikipedia. First, I read everything that is said in Russian on the Russian page of Wikipedia, then everything on the English page of Wikipedia, and I make a glossary. And then, if there is something interesting for me, I go to additional articles, and this goes on and on forever, depending on how much time I have to prepare.
Mhm.
Right. And
Well,
also, yeah, one thing to add, for example, if this is an interview with some famous artist or politician, or even not so famous, very often you already have interviews with this guy. And I go on YouTube and try to find him. And I try to listen to how he or she speaks in order to get the gist, get the neck, to understand how it is, what kind of accent they use, what kind of ideas they normally share. And after listening to a couple of interviews, it becomes much easier to interpret this person.
and at your work of simultaneous interpreter, I know that you are supposed to work in pairs. It's never
Right.
supposed to be a work of just and only one, but it's been a common practice, kind of common practice around Russia. I've heard from Kirill. He used to talk in Russian about that a little bit. And if it's a work in pair, how much time is limited for a person?
Yes, you are right. We work mostly in pairs in Russia, and we normally shift or take shifts 20 or 30 minutes. That depends on the preferences. Some people say, let's do 20 minutes. Others say, it's okay, it's a long day. Yeah, you can't even go out and drink coffee for during 20 minutes. Let's do 30 minutes. So it's that. And yes, some people do work alone in Russia. Maybe that's because you save money. Maybe the organizers save money. And sometimes they are able to find one person instead of two persons in order to, for the same money as for one. I mean,
I
it's
think it
going to
might be
be
quite debatable topic.
50% cheaper. Yes.
Mhm.
Or maybe they can save a third of the money. Yes, but yes, it happens. I do my best not to do that. Yeah, mostly I work in pairs, but there is one customer who is used to having one interpreter, and they normally have conferences of 1 hour, 1 hour, 15 minutes. And I agreed to do that for them because I said, well,
Mhm.
1 hour, 15 minutes, I can do that. But this is an exception in my practice. Yes,
For example,
most of
if
the
you
time
work
I work in pairs. Yes.
based on the common practice, if you work in pair, what about the glossary? Should you agree on the glossary, the common one? I mean, do not use the synonyms. I think logically it should be the practice, but I don't know what kind of reality have you got in this case.
Yes, I agree with my partner before the job starts. I show him or her my glossary, and we sometimes agree on the basic terms. Yeah, sometimes my partner says, well, I think this should be translated like that, and this should be interpreted like that. And I say, okay. Let's
Mhm.
do it like this.
I've
Yes.
got some more questions probably. What kind of impact has stressful environment got on the quality of interpreting skills? Because it depends on the personality, of course, maybe for ladies, it depends on the personality really, but what kind of impact might it get on the quality?
Well, you get sometimes a little bit scared before you start walking. But well, as for me, I will speak for myself.